All right. So let's open up the chat room. I want to hear what were some of your favorite things of the class and what you're going to miss and what you might take away with you. So let's just start our chat rolling with that. So hearing that the novels, loving those, reading the books, all right. Like the discussions a lot about the novels, the books were a real bonus there. Okay. All right, like the first and the third novel, so we weren't sure about the second one. On the stories, I see. All right, so hopefully those will be things that you'll be taking with you. The characters were interesting and believable. Opportunity to read something outside of the textbook. Good deal. I'm not a reader, so but enjoyed all the ones, okay, that we read and the separate chats for the groups and learning about the interventions. Excellent. Okay, about modeling. Excellent. Let's see. Okay. All right, ghost being your favorite. Okay. All right. All right, so some of this stuff was a recap of the interviews class, right? We kind of took it to the next level with that. Um, okay, good deal, good deal. Well, we'll kind of continue on with some of those conversations, but those were good for getting us warmed up. Yeah, I'm hearing that what Ebony's saying there. So not much of a reader, but feeling that there's something here. So excellent. So I wanted to include tonight some ways that you could keep looking at the books that we did. So I'm just going to share a few websites here. So let me switch gears. Joey Pigska was written by Jack Gantos. And let me share my screen here. And here's Mr. Ganto's website, and I wanted to show you some of the books that he's written several other series. So if you like the Joey Pigsa, you might find some other characters, but more than that, Joey Pigsa was not just one book. He goes on and you get to learn about how Joey grows up a bit this way. So those might be something you're curious about checking out. And he's got a few others there. So that's Jack Cantos, and the Joey Pigska series continues on. I wanted to also point out that these are books that, well, all of the authors and books that we had are readily available in our public libraries. I'm going to show you in the catalog here, and we're going to search for Joey Pigska. So this is the Forsyth County's Public Library, and we'll see what they have just here in our local counties. I put in Joey Pigska as the key. And there's some more from his series. But you can see some of these are in a CD audio book, or they have a paper book, or e-recordings of those. So a whole bunch of options there. I'm not sure if you've done much with our public libraries, but you can look up any of our books and other things by the authors. And if you have a library that's close to you, like here's our Carver School Road branch library, you can place a hold on that and have them bring it to you at that library. So let's say the copy's available at one of the other branches. They'll get it for you and have it at whatever library you want it to be at. And you can also search and do it for all the North Carolina libraries. So if there's something out there that you'd like to have access to and you like doing it by the listening, you got all sorts of resources to keep up with that. So I share that with you. Some of you said that these were things that you were interested in reading, but I also want you to kind of have that as a tool in your tool bag for when you're working with others. That if you felt some strength from reading books or listening to books, you may find something you remember from these books that you can show someone else, and you can introduce the strength of stories that way as a strategy or intervention. All right, so let's come on back to our class slides. All right, the other book, sounds like this one wasn't as much of a strength when you're comparing to the others, but another book that we looked at was Harbor Me. And Jacqueline Woodson has also a number of other books out there. She has some, we were reading one of her middle grade books, but she has some adult and young adult books out there. And another thing that's happening for authors right now, they often will balance their time with writing with doing school visits or community visits and travel to meet up with their fans. But they're instead doing those now virtually. And there's a number of out there that they're free. And all you have to do is to sign up and find those. So I'll go back and forth here. Let me go back to our screen. And we're looking at Jacqueline Woodson's. This is her website. She has a number of other books out there. She has some that have gotten more rewards. Brown Girl Dreaming is somewhat a memoir of hers of growing up as an African American woman in the 60s and 70s. And she has a number of others. So if you're curious, those might be some things to check out on your reading list. She has had a history of getting a whole bunch of awards. So she had gotten one of the highest awards for being an author of children's books, which is the Hans Christian Andersen Award. So things that might be curious that way. And she has a number of these events. These are all virtual events happening this month that are free, that are at different libraries. So if you have a moment and like to hear her in person virtually, those are out there by just going to JacquelineWoodson.com. All right. And then our last author was Jason Reynolds. And Jason's also written a whole bunch of books. The one that I introduced you to was Ghost, which I think I've mentioned is actually part of a series. So some of those characters that you read about in Ghost have their own book. So you may like carrying on and finding out what sort of happens and what goes in deeper with each of those. He also has written some, well, his books and his way of taking on things can hit some intense topics. He's written some more young adult books that have gotten a lot of attention that you may be interested in exploring some of those. All American Boys have gotten a lot of interest. If anyone was ever the Miles Morales fan, he wrote the novel version with that. This Long Way Down is written as someone, the main character takes an elevator ride down, making a decision with if he's going to go and take revenge for the death of his, I think it's his brother. And I'm looking at reading this one right now, Stamped, which is, it combines, I don't know if any of you have heard the name Ibram X. Kendi, who is an academic who's written a whole bunch of books that are getting attention on anti-racism. And Mr. Reynolds writes it then in a more down-to-earth version. So I think some other things to add to your list of curious books that you may be interested in. He also has an event. I think best.
Is Miss Zook's sound on, or am I having problems here?
Yeah, you're not able to hear me? Nope. It looks like it's just you, Daniel. Okay. All right. So others are hearing me. Okay. So this book, this event here, I'll stick this one in our chat box, but this is coming up in March. These two wrote one of those books of All American Boys. It's gotten a fair amount of attention, so that might be something that you'd like to hear him in person. You might be curious about this live virtual event. So that's that event that you can sign up for. Okay, let's go back to our slides. And yep, we're there with Jason. Okay, so that was just some information that I wanted to share with you and let you think about what you might want to continue with some of those books that you're now fans of, or these authors that you might be fans of, and keep reading. Keep being aware of how stories impact you, and that if they impact you, they're probably going to impact other people that you work with. So keep sharing stories. So time for shifting to some fun. I want to first open up the chat box, and I'm going to first talk about affective strategies. So let's start with that one and throw out in the chat box what you remember. What are some of the affective strategies or approaches or reasons that we use those? What's an example of something that you learned in this class that would be an affective strategy? Okay, so planning would be one of the stages, and then affective strategies will be then what we would use when dealing with when we're dealing with feelings. So if we're dealing with feelings, so we do the process. So if we remember, the process is we build rapport, we assess and gather information, then we get the goals, and then we choose strategies. And affective strategies, these are the ones related to emotions and feelings. So what were some of those feelings that could get someone in trouble? Throw it out in the chat box. What are some feelings? Okay, so anxiety, that being an uncomfortable feeling. Anger can certainly get in trouble. Okay, stress. All right. So these are examples of where the problem might be related to emotions. Depression, rejection. These are great. These are great. So when those are coming up, you've built rapport with the person you're working with. You found out what was going on with the problem. Isolation, depression, their attitude. So their attitude is probably what they're showing as a defense with their not coping well with something going on inside. So we assessed and found out that that was probably the main problem. Now we're going to write goals to address that. So we're going to write that they're going to practice certain skills or coping strategies. And then what we do, the counseling strategy that we use to match that is affective. So I see, we might teach some skills to, instead of going and punching someone, we're going to work on some of the self-care or managing that stress or talking about that stress or anger or writing about it or reading about it or doing things that are going to better healthily cope. This is where we might talk about some of the positive. So we might be looking at self-esteem. All right. Now that same process is what we're going to use, but if the problem going on is cognitive, and cognitive is that fancy word for thinking, it's up in the head. Build the rapport, assess and gather the information, write the goals based on what we learn about those, but those goals are about then changing the thinking. What are some examples of thinking strategies, cognitive strategies we learned? Okay, so we might be practicing some different words. This is where we might be working on some of that self-talk, role play. All right, reframing, if you remember that one. All right, so yeah, we sometimes will cross over coping that we're going to be thinking and feeling. So sometimes they might be crossing over. So recognizing where the faulty thinking's going on. All right. And then this last one that we worked on here was behavioral. I'll circle that one several times. Behavioral strategies. Same thing. We build a rapport with the person. We gather information. We find out that the problem's related to their actions. We'll write some goals to learn new skills, new actions, and now we're going to use behavioral strategies. So time out. This is where we might use some reshaping of the behavior, teaching, moving from this behavior is not working, but we're going to replace it with this other one. So shaping towards that. This is where we might use behavior charts. We might use rewards. All right. All right, so the cognitive strategies are about the thinking. So we're going to teach about the thinking. And then behavioral is when it's new skills, new actions. So we might use the token economies. We might use some ways of measuring that change of behaviors. We might teach someone some new skills. So we might teach them how to use the library so they can get books now and use that independently as one of their strategies. We might teach them how to use the bus to get to the library. We might teach them how to use the bus to get to the library to look up jobs, how to complete the resume, how to work at the new job. All right. So we just pulled together some of the key things in that process that we learned in this class. Now, after we do the strategies, what's the stage that we come to the end? Rapport, assessment, planning our goals, then we implement the strategies, and there we have it. We evaluate. We figure out, is what we're doing working or not working? If it's working, have we met the full goal? If it's not working, are we moving in the right direction, so we just need to keep doing it? Or do we need to change it up and do something different? Okay, good deal. So that's where we are with pulling things together. So tonight, gonna move into our small groups, In this discussion, I'm going to have you reflect on all three books. So you're going to compare some characters, you're going to look across all the characters, and you're going to look at then applying some of these strategies across the characters and matching it. So kind of open up your mind to what we've been doing this for all of our units, and we're going to use the characters for those discussions. And then I also am going to have you pull together in small groups and give a little bit of feedback on the class. So let me get you this page. All right. So here's the Google page or form. So grab that so you have that for your groups. Let me see. And let me move you into those groups. All right. So got smaller groups. We don't have as many groups tonight. In your groups, as you're able, let's go through. As you're able, turn on your mics, have that conversation, have someone be your scribe, and we'll come back together. Let's see. We'll come back together just a bit before 7. I'll give you the heads up of when I'm pulling you back together. Here we go. Hey Vera, I see you're back. I will have you join in. I'm going to move you into one of the groups.